Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth session of our webinar series. We are grateful to have your support and encouragement in this journey. We are India's first ever zero tech edtech platform, driven completely by machine learning as per you, your way of thinking, as per your pace of understanding in any area of your interest. We have with us today Mr. S. Harishankar, who will be leading today's session on Back to Our Roots with Agriculture Studies. Mr. Harishankar has many accolades to his name. He recently retired as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Punjab and Sind Bank. A highly experienced banker, Mr. Harishankar is a graduate in agricultural sciences and has worked in almost all the key segments of banking in various capacities since 1985. He also served as the Senior VP and Branch Head of Toronto branch in State Bank of India, Canada. Mr. Harishankar underwent many prestigious training programs like Global Advanced Management Program in Shanghai, Executive and Leadership Development Program in IIM Kozhikode, New Product Development and Marketing at ASCI Hyderabad, etc. We thank him for joining our webinar series and welcome him to lead the session today. Yes, you are. Yes. Yes. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
He was flushed with anger. I saw the farmer getting up from the seat.
Hmm.
I grew more tense. I was a young boy and I just into the second year or third year of my service in the bank. So I didn't know how the people would react. He got up, took his umbrella, and then he turned back and tried and started walking away. Midway through the hall, he stopped and turned back, looked at Mr. Cherian and said, "Sir, I will come next week." Mr. Cherian was aghast. He thought it was his farmer would either abuse him or walk away. He said, "I will come back next week. Oh, you said many things about me, but I am not that." And he walked away. Mr. Cherian got up from his seat, went after him, shook his hands and said, "I maaf mang raha hu main. I apologize to you. You showed me some important thing. You know what you are." So the character of Indian farmer is that he knows what he is. So that was a learning which I got as a boy of 24 years old, very young in the thing. You tell him anything that you abuse him, you don't give him a return, you don't expect the market to play up to his demands. See, 76% of India's farming population, they are small and marginal farmers. The Indian Statistics Organization, National Statistics Organization's data show that 86%. No, I'm actually bringing it back because the recent data, maybe since some more years have worked, the data is actually on 2012 basis. I am actually granting some kind of a concession to that. And so now recently I have read it's almost 74%. But here they are marginal farmers, small farmers, and the maximum holding they are having is only 2 hectares of land. And these people, they contribute largely to the agriculture production, but they are still at the subsistence level. But if you ask me, I will quote this example to say he knows what he is. And that is the biggest strength of agriculture in India. A farming community who knows exactly what they are. So that is why they are agitating. That is why they are not satisfied. They are saying, you repeal. That's why and they are able to draw lines and say that, so this is good, this is not good. For us, they clearly can decipher. They need not be educated. They need not hold a postgraduate. But their collective thinking, the kind of education which they have gathered by reading the book of nature, that is the most valuable thing they have. So that is point number one when we discuss anything about agriculture and its potential. The potential of agriculture is that, when anybody who is aspirant to join that community of farmers, you do not look at the immediate gains of being a millionaire. But if you really can satisfy the other aspects of your life by knowing that, you are growing food, you are growing food, you are quenching hunger and thirst, and then you are purposefully investing your time. This is the basic of what I wanted to tell you. But the basics do not motivate people. You see, you are Harishankar, you came, you gave a lecture for half an hour, you spoke philosophy. No, we are not here to listen to a discourse. I know. I am not here to give a discourse either. I'll give you another example of a young entrepreneurial in a community. I don't know whether you are aware of a brand called Soulfull, Soulfull. It's recently this company, the company's name is Kottaram Agro Food Products.
Okay.
I know this company because this company is based, their roots are from my state, Kerala. And one of the company's directors is a person who was my classmate in the College of Agriculture. He is Dr. K.K. Narayan. And the others are all very young people. So they found a potential in producing food products out of millets. Millets are called coarse grains.
Okay.
If you make roti out of a millet, and it will be very rough. It will not be as soft as probably the गेहूं से जो रोटी आप बनाते हैं वो जैसे आप सॉफ्ट नहीं हो जाता है, लेकिन मिलेट से जो रोटी बनाते हैं वो थोड़ा सा रफ हो जाता है, ठीक है, but still people eat, है ना? So they found that you can create alternate fruit products out of millets, and they started this company basically on a variety of products, of value-added products in millets. This company was founded in 2013. And recently, this company was in the news because Tata Consumer Products, TPCL, TCPL, they have acquired this company. They joined as co-investors. They grew with the company. They grew, they saw the business growing. They got a feel of this company. They understood the potential of this company. Now, the small and a band of entrepreneurs who started this company, they are selling this company. The newspaper reports Since it has come in the public domain, I'm telling you, to give a value of this thing, 154 crores, the company is being sold. So what I'm saying is, see, okay, I sort of and I told about the philosophical part, the spiritual part, or the most driving force of somebody knowing what that person is.
Sure.
So that is the strength. And that strength doesn't motivate people unless I am able to correlate that with the income earning potential. I'm turning the spotlight to the other segment. I'm telling you that, see, the young brilliant of people and the company, they started in 2013. They have been able to run the company for 8 years, and the company has been the company which was started to create value added product out of millets. Now that same company has become a value added product for the promoters because it is being acquired by Tata Consumer Products for a value of 155 crores or so. So that means entrepreneurial and intervention in agriculture is equally challenging and equally beckoning for the right-minded people as the other values of production of food. So this is the range of the subject that we are talking. Now, what do you need to reach there? You need to reach there, and as I said, the most essential prerequisite is your skill. What is a skill for a traditional farmer? He knows by his experience what is the right time to plow the land, start the land preparation. What's the right time to soak his seeds? What's the right time to sow the seeds, and what's the right time to do all the other operations? Because he has gained this experience and out of the years and years of practice of doing the same thing. So he knows the rainy season and all. But what are the challenges? The climate is changing, and it has become very much unpredictable now. We are actually going into the El Nino syndromes. We are going to have unpredictable interventions of hail, hurricane, drought, and whatnot, floods and whatnot. So all these things have added to the already vagary bound vocation called agriculture, making it more difficult. Plus, you have got two other things. Actually, one thing is always rising in agriculture, and one thing is not always correspondingly rising in agriculture. These two phases of agriculture are cost of production and the yield. So the cost of production goes up, labor cost goes up, the input cost goes up, the unavailability of certain kind of things make it more dearer, and then the cost goes up. So all these things, go on adding to the cost of production, but you do not get the commensurate gain when you sell the crop. What happens? Onion is a very, very classic commodity. Potato is a very classic commodity. Mirchi, that is lal mirchi, is a classic commodity. Every now and then you say onion prices shoot up to 150, 200 rupees per kilo. But who gets this 200 rupees and who gets this the minor part of it at the farm gate? The producer gets, even when you are buying from the mandi, from the market, from the vegetable shop, onion per kilo. Yesterday I bought some onion, and for my family's purposes, it was costing 67.5 rupees per kilo in a supermarket, 60 rupees at a wayside mandi, and if I had traveled down, I would have been able to buy it at 55 rupees. So the value chain of traders, that itself has a price vagary of 67.5 to a well-organized, orchestrated corporate like a supermarket to a wayside seller of 55 rupees per kilo. So the organized and unorganized sectors pan out and play. But even when I pay 55 rupees and say that I have saved 12.5 rupees for my family because I didn't buy from the supermarket, I was willing to travel further, bargain a little, and then get it at 55 rupees from a wayside vendor. The farmer who has produced an onion, he doesn't get that much. So that is the biggest thing which is remaining unaddressed in the Indian system. So when you look at the income scenario of an agriculture, there are many points where there are offering potential. Why now I am saying it is not a problem, but a potential. Now the central policy makers, the state level policy makers, the country as a whole, they have converged into converting these problems into potential by identifying which are the areas to be strengthened. For example, you produce wheat and you produce rice in Punjab. I have worked extensively in Punjab. You produce the maximum area under any crop and put together in Punjab area, it's rice. But Punjabis do not consume rice. So why are they producing it? They are producing it for the purpose of selling it.
Yeah.
Okay. And who buys them? Yesterday also, again, to quote my own example, I bought one packet of basmati rice because I want, my wife said, she would prepare some stuff and out of that. So we bought it. So it was a packaged commodity and I paid some hefty price for that. Okay. Now, the Punjab farmer doesn't get it. The Punjab farmer doesn't read rice. Then why is he producing? He is producing as a commercial activity. Now, Punjab farmer, suppose, now this is a potential. So there is an intermediary who does the processing, who does the packaging, who does the storage. He absorbs cost in all these kind of things. For converting rice to paddy to rice, he has a cost because he has to erect a plant, he has to run a factory. Then for processing it in packaging it, he has to have some working capital requirement, some interest element will kick in. Then he has to store to and in some place. Again, his money is not getting realized unless he sells it. So all these things happen and he is finally able to sell it and realize his value. Now, so the Punjab producer doesn't consume it, but he's giving it to an intermediary. So which means the Punjab rice producer, if he is able to sell this rice directly to me, Harishankar, sitting in Kerala, the 200 rupees per kilo which I have paid for the basmati, Punjab farmer would be probably able to sell it to me at 100 rupees and still gain a profit much better than that he would have gained from the intermediary. So this is what we are trying to address now, the disintermediation in the marketing of agriculture. We say we are enabling it by a law, by enabling the farmer in any corner of India, somebody cultivating rice in Assam, somebody cultivating potato in some other part, somebody cultivating maize in UP, or somebody cultivating mustard in Rajasthan. He is able to market it to another area. I'll just quote an example. In electricity, we operate in grids. Some states produce an electricity and consume it not according. There is a peak time of production. There is a peak time of consumption. So actually, Kerala during the daytime consumption is low because families, most of the thing is a working class people go out to their offices. They do not live in the house. Their fans will be switched off. Their lights will be switched off, and they do not consume. But at the same time, the production is there. So there is a surplus at that point of time. Maybe in an industrialized area, this surplus can be utilized. So what is it? So we have actually thought of creating grids in the power distribution sector. We upload to the production to the grid. The grid transport the production to the not physically but conceptually. Gives it to the place where it is getting consumed. So similarly, a grid in agriculture marketing is possible, but that grid again, farmers doubt that it is going to create another kind of intermediation, because the grid that we are proposing to give them, the ultimate, the beginning of my statement is that the farmer knows himself. But we are trying to tell him that no, this is not what you are. We know what you want. We are going to give ABC for private participation and corporate farmer, contract farming giants. We are going to bring in. We are going to make you sign, give you a facility to sign an MOU with them so that he will buy your product. His immediate reaction is contempt and disbelief. He's not trusting the local mandi man. He knows. Tomorrow here and also they will have to meet in some shadi, some kind of function, some kind of social interaction is required, and he knows him. अगर पैसा नहीं मिलता है तो नहीं पैसा ही वो नहीं देते हैं तो बल्कि इनको गला पकड़कर पैसा लेने का मौका भी है इनके लिए. लेकिन but that is not possible when he is signing an MOU with a corporate. So the thing is, the potential areas are strengthening the marketing, strengthening an electronic national market that is available, strengthening the storage facilities, strengthening the distribution facilities, strengthening specific packaging facilities. Some of the crops which are perishable needs a special kind of packaging. For example, fruits to stay at the same stage of ripening when they are packed till they are consumed, they need to be put under something called an ethylene package. Seafood has to be quick frozen. So lot of different technologies are available. So all these things are causing us, giving us opportunities. Now the difference between yesterday and today, that is the past and now, is that the policy framework is there to make it happening.
Yeah.
Now to come back to the core subject, this should give the listeners a perspective and a hope that okay, if I do something in agriculture, one, I can have a value addition in my own company, and I will be able to take my value out if I do not want to continue in that vocation, or I can still have synergy with a larger corporate who have deeper pocket, who will synergize with me to grow my business much bigger than what I had thought of. Either I can exit selling my company for a value, because for the 13 years of my running the company, I have been able to gain this value. I'm happy with that. I can exit and start another vocation. Or I can synergize with a larger one, because I have the experience, I have the know-how, I know this company, I know my market. The other person will join me, elaborate my network with more money into that, and I'll be able to do it. So that is the hope in one sector. Other thing, policy-enabled hope. Whatever that was a problem, like isolated markets being completely commanded by a certain set of local people who have money, but I can have the option of selling to them or to somebody else of my wish, my way, and this thing according to the price which I would like to get my product. And those areas of lateral, strengthening in the economy, policy-wise, they are happening. So soon it will happen. You must remember that at the time of our independence, India was in a food insufficient country. We were actually looking at US or other rich countries for sending a supply of wheat and other things through some aid projects. Now from that, we have converted the land to a food surplus country. Yes, we are a food surplus country. Though hunger is prevailing, we are a food surplus country. What are the other two options which we need? They are very important that see, food preservation, food post-harvest handling, and food distribution are also avenues which are emerging for us to participate as an entrepreneur or as a policy maker to participate. So there are emerging areas. I'll tell you something else. Now I'll come to the agriculture education. I was reading through a report of ICAR who say that 54,000 fresh graduates every year are required in this country to sustain the agricultural related extension measures, other measures, education measures, and other entrepreneurial areas. Whereas we are able to get only 40,000 people per annum, which means 14,000 deficit we are running. And that is going to be a cascading deficit, because more people will be retiring, more people will be going out of the system. And now that is a market. But passing out from Guwahati, that a boy or girl will say, no, I passed out in the 2018. So 3 years have passed. I have not been employed. So that is also there. Again, the grid system. Demand is somewhere, supply is somewhere else. And we are not able to correlate the demand with supply. What are the reasons? This is for the listeners. That kind of supply demand constraints we are facing because of our own home orientation. I'm comfortable to be in Thiruvananthapuram or my houses. I'm comfortable to meet my brother-in-law who is and my sister who are my neighbors. My mother who is staying 2 kilometers away. I am unsure of traveling up to Rajasthan in Jaipur or in Jodhpur or in Kolkata or in Guwahati or in some other part, Arunachal Pradesh, some other part, or in any other part of India, because I'm unsure, I'm less confident. But so that is creating a demand and supply grid imbalance in agriculture graduates availability also. So my friend in Guwahati, my son or daughter who is in Guwahati, I would request that son or daughter to move out from Guwahati. If you find you are not employed there, go to another part, you will certainly be employable. That is a potential. I'm only trying to open certain windows. In half an hour, more than opening the windows, it is not possible. Otherwise, okay, I would request Ms. Priyam to give me one full day session, and I would try and come and try to explain to you all the avenues. Still, I will be requiring one more day to complete it. But that is not how we are structuring things. So time is enough value. Time is you need to measure out time. Otherwise, the value proposition will not be there. No, this is agriculture is there. Now there are 8 or 9 subjects which were not there when I am myself an agriculture graduate. I had a department of pathology to teach me about all the microbial activities, pathogenic activities, and induced by them. Now, in the agriculture college, my own batchmate retired yesterday, heading a department of microbiology.
Okay.
The other day, me and my wife, we were both agriculture graduates. We took our children to the agriculture college. To my daughter and son-in-law to agriculture college when they were in a visit to Trivandrum, and we showed all the in the college the beautiful campus where we studied many years back. I graduated in 1982. And my children were seeing and everything. And I was surprised. I was telling my wife that, there is a department of biotechnology that was not even conceived of at that point of time. So there are new and new streams of this thing getting added. Okay. So in short, when you look at agriculture education, India, we started the formally recognizing agriculture education when in 1960, we promulgated the first state-run agriculture university called the Govind Ballabhai Pant University in UP, GB Pant University in UP. Now you see how many universities are there, how many state-assisted universities are there, how many deemed universities are there. So there is a plethora of opportunities available in agriculture education with more and more subjects for specialization.
Yeah.
So my batchmate who graduated with me in 1982, she retired as the head of department of biotech and microbiology. There is another gentleman who is now heading, a junior of mine, in the department of biotechnology. So these were emerging subjects in that point, at that point of time. They were consumed under another bigger department. Now they have all branched off. So basically, now it's time. I will try to put perspective to what I have been telling. One, the biggest motivational factor for you to join the stream of agriculture should be that you're going to join the community of individuals who are very sure about what they are, which also knows and gives you another perspective, which I did not tell you in the beginning because I wanted the film to run till the end to give you the climax. The farmer who knows what he is also knows what he is not.
Yeah.
So that is the gap analysis in the subject. That is the malady remedy analysis we are able to do. And now, as far as policy interventions are concerned, this malady remedy analysis has very clearly been kicked in. And now we know areas where the Indian policy and governors are going to intervene and propose better and better options. That will add to entrepreneurial value to each one of us if you are going to be an entrepreneur yourself. To motivate you to become an entrepreneur, I cited a life story of the company called Kottaram Agro Foods, whose brand is Soulful, who started in 2013 and sold this company to Tata Consumer Products, a much bigger company who found value in these small enterprises and bought it up for 158 crores. So they realized much higher than the dividends which they have been getting all through these years by selling this company also. So that is an entrepreneur value that is there. And the fourth one and the final one is education is always supportive of these areas. New and new courses are getting added, new universities are coming into being. More students can find themselves challenged with opportunities and then just immerse themselves into these kind of things. So with that, I think my allotted time is getting over and I am all ears for questions from you.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions with us. So agriculture and traditional science in India is rural. So how do you think education in mother tongue will help future policy developers to cater to agriculture?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sure. Agriculture and traditional science in India is rural. So how do you think education in mother tongue will help future policy makers to cater to agriculture?
Okay. See, the best thing, actually, there is a subject branch called agriculture extension. I'm just trying to correlate so that whoever who put the question in, that person will understand it. Agriculture extension means translation of the practices from the laboratory to the field.
Yes.
So in laboratory, you can do anything in any language. Probably if you are studied in Germany, probably it will be German. But to the farmer in any part of Punjab or in West Bengal or Guwahati or anywhere, he needs to be talked to in his mother tongue. And the agricultural extension man does two things. He translates the subject into a content that this man the farmer would understand. And so that he will not complicate it with the jargons. He will only use the commonsensical practical terms and then translate it and enthuse him to adopt this. For that, the best language he will be communicating are two languages. One is the language of practice, which the farmer knows. Okay, if I take a tool in my right hand, he will also take a similar tool in his right hand. But then I ask him to hold it like this. I let it talk. That talking will come in mother tongue. So agriculture extension activity is best pronounced through mother tongue. Now, if that can be done, I think vernacular education in agriculture has a relevance. Okay. I studied in my vernacular language up to my pre-degree. Okay. My second language was Malayalam in my pre-degree. I studied science subjects in pre-degree for the +1 and +2 years in English. But up to my 10th standard, I studied all subjects in Malayalam. And boiling point, which you say in English, has a Malayalam equivalent.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can understand. And the velocity which you say in physics in English, there is a Malayalam equivalent. And my science, the scientific temperament has not been affected in any way by understanding the concept in Malayalam.
Exactly.
So the question is whether there is a possibility. Is a possibility. Now, there is a second step to it. Then, when the possibility is depending on my willingness to accept that possibility. Okay, somebody in West Bengal feels that I can be taught in Bengali. I'll be understanding Bengali well, so I'm willing for that. But in the same person from Bengal, another person may think that okay, I will be comfortable in English. I am a person. I'm going beyond your answer. So the demanded answer is whether it is possible or not. My answer I have already given. It is possible. But I'm going beyond my question. I'm a person who would actually demand the policymakers to tune it to the receptacle. Who wants it in which way? And customize it that way. That will be my answer.
Also, since we were talking about the gaps in agriculture studies, so how do you think can cognitive or skill-based learning can help young mind address these gaps?
Are you focusing on the medium, that is whether it can be physical or online, or are you on the larger perspective of how it has to be imparted?
For now, education we now is based on rote learning and lesser on skill. So at My Language, My Learning, we are trying to change that learning should not be only about scoring marks or, memorize lines or everything. We are trying to make it more user-based. We are making it more skill-based so that learning is more beyond scoring marks. So that is what we are trying to change from My Language, My Learning. So, what is your opinion on skill-based learning, trying to change the young mind to develop an interest in agriculture studies?
Absolutely, you are in the right direction. Actually, there is a concept of a learning called educational, an experiential learning. Now, beyond that, let me just explain. I think the larger audience, maybe the students may not be tuned to this, but at least the parents, some of them may be tuned to this. Basically, what is it? When I wanted to communicate something, I'm speaking through any language that I want, which is when it is, I'm communicating with this Priyam, one-to-one. My language is a barrier. My language is an enabler. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably that's why sometimes you have to ask questions. I need to repeat. Still, 100% understanding. I don't know if I'm able to carry myself through to you.
Yeah.
I'm not very sure. Then when does it happen? That is the philosophically, spiritually, what we say is that Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samchaya. Which means that, the silence of the Guru is understood and interpreted by the Shishya. And thereby they have been able to clear their doubts. So that is the best communication. If I am being, in my silence, I can communicate whatever I wanted to answer to your second question. Then that becomes immediately translated to you without any loss. Words have words are limitations. Emotions have limitations. Okay, when I stress on a syllable and make a speech, then probably I think the attention may get wandered to my emotion, not the emotion that you wanted, or the really inert emotion that should have been there. Okay, now having said that, experiential learning is something very close to this. Experiential learning, you need to experience yourself what you need to do, which has to have a very high cognitive ability. If My Language, My Learning is attempting to do that, I think that is very unique, and that I really, really wish that you are successful in whatever that you are attempting in, because that is the right kind of learning that is required, and that is the right kind of understanding that it should create. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today. We had a very insightful session on encouraging younger minds to, take up beyond engineering and medicine. High time that we look beyond engineering and marketing and medicine. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we wish you all the success. So thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you to give me an opportunity to interact with an audience right across the country. And it's quite interesting to see that younger minds like yours is actually trying to promulgate something that is quite interesting, innovative. So all the best for your activities. And I'm always willing to associate with you.
Okay. Thank you so much. We would like to have you back again for a longer session.
Okay, right. Bye. Yeah.
Bye, sir.
Yeah.